At around 6:30 in the morning, firefighters discovered a small blue kiddie pool near Grapevine Lake. Inside was a dismembered body burning right there in the grass. The remains were burned so badly that investigators couldn't even tell at first if it was a man or a woman, an adult or a child. Later, they realized the victim was 24-year-old Jacqueline Jackie Vandegrift, a student at Texas Woman's University. Quiet, friendly, easy to talk to, just a regular girl who had gone out that night to a bar looking for a side job and hoping to meet some new people. Just hours before her death, people saw her acting completely normal. She was sitting at the bar laughing, talking with a guy who had sat down next to her almost by chance. The two of them later went to another bar together. After that, they got into his car. Surveillance cameras captured Jackie sitting in the passenger seat. She looked relaxed, not scared, not nervous. Those were the last images of Jackie alive. The man sitting next to her was Charles Bryant, a 30-year-old personal trainer with a criminal history. Just 3 days earlier, a protective order had been issued against him for stalking his ex-girlfriend. He had already been arrested multiple times for stalking and harassment. That night, Jackie's and Charles's phones were both moving in the direction of his house. At 10:56 that evening, Charles posted on Facebook, "I'll teach you tricks that'll completely blow your mind." Around 1:30 in the morning, Jackie's phone was already near his house. At 4:41 in the morning, Walmart surveillance cameras captured Charles inside the store. He was buying a shovel. Less than 2 hours later, firefighters found Jackie's body burning in the grass. Her heart had been cut out. Then, the very next day, Jackie's Twitter account suddenly became active again. Someone posted a message from her account that said, "Never knew I could feel this way." Investigators were convinced her phone was still with the killer. But honestly, that was only a small part of what they were about to uncover. Inside Charles's house, police found a knife believed to have been used in the dismemberment, a white plastic zip tie with Jackie's hair caught in it, her purse thrown away in the trash. Inside his car, investigators discovered the battery from her phone and a stun gun with Jackie's DNA on the electrodes. Even the kiddie pool used to burn her body belonged to him. During questioning, Charles first claimed he didn't even know Jackie. Then he changed his story. He said they had supposedly been kissing in the car and that Jackie herself asked him to tighten a plastic zip tie around her neck. Detectives called the story complete nonsense. Later, the medical examiner confirmed there was absolutely no evidence of any sexual contact. But the most disturbing part of this case wasn't even the murder itself. Investigators started to suspect that Jackie may not have been the real target. Charles had an obsessive fixation on his ex-girlfriend, Caitlin. He stalked her, created fake accounts, and somehow kept finding her even after she moved into a university dorm. And after Jackie's death, he actually used the murdered girl's phone to send Caitlin a friend request on Facebook. Later, Jim Holland openly said he believed Charles had already planned to kill someone that night, and that Jackie just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And investigators also feared this might have only been the beginning. Hey guys, let me grab you for just a second. I'm really curious where my audience is watching from, so I'd love for you to drop a comment and tell me what city you're in and what time it is for you right now. Thanks for taking a moment. Go ahead and share that in the comments. And now let's keep going. Grapevine Lake in Texas, about 20 miles northwest of Dallas, September 14th, 2016, around 6:30 in the morning. The Grapevine Fire Department got a call about something burning near Grapevine Lake. When firefighters got to the scene, they saw this small blue kiddie pool sitting out in the grass, and inside of it was a dismembered body. The body was burned so badly that investigators couldn't even tell if it was a child or an adult, a man or a woman. It was a seriously disturbing scene, and detectives later said that in all their years working cases, they had never seen anything like it.
They located a body that appeared to have been set on fire. The body, there is some degree of dismemberment to the body. Investigators and crime scene technicians arrived on the scene and began investigating shortly thereafter. We requested the response of the FBI evidence removal and recovery team to assist us in that investigation.
However, There was still enough skin left on her fingers for investigators to pull fingerprints, and that's how they were able to identify the victim. She was 24-year-old Jacqueline Ray Vandergriff, but to her friends and family, she was just Jackie. She didn't have anything with her, no bags, no personal belongings, nothing. But detectives quickly found out that she lived nearly 20 miles away in Denton. The dismemberment completely shocked everyone, even her heart had been cut out. One witness reported seeing someone who they believed was a man standing over the fire right before leaving the scene. But unfortunately, the witness couldn't give police any more details than that. Then the next day, her Twitter account suddenly became active again, and a post appeared saying, "Never knew I could feel this way." It seemed pretty obvious that her killer had gotten hold of her phone, and now, the hunt to find him was officially on.
Hello everyone, my name is Jacqueline Vandegrift, but friends call me Jackie. I am currently a junior here at Texas Women's University, and my major is nutrition with an emphasis in wellness. I chose this major because I realized while working as an esthetician, which is skincare if you're not familiar, I realized the importance of nutrition and just overall health, and decided that this is what I was going to study. So thank you for watching. I am really looking forward to learning about all of you and learning with you in this class.
Jackie Vandergriff had always been a huge book lover and was super curious about the world around her. She genuinely loved learning about pretty much everything. She was also really active and athletic, and by the time she was just 3 years old, she had already started gymnastics. Later on, she even competed at level 5 in state competitions. Her best friend was also named Jackie, and people affectionately called them Jackie Squared. She was the smartest person I ever knew. She could have done absolutely anything in life. Jackie always accepted you exactly as you were, and being around her just made it easy to be yourself. She was confident, open, but at the same time really calm and like the kind of person you instantly trusted. After graduating from high school in Frisco, Jackie got her esthetician license, and later she became a student at Texas Women's University. Her longtime passion for health and fitness stayed a huge part of her life there too. She chose to study nutrition and food science because she dreamed of eventually becoming a nutritionist. Honestly, everything seemed to be falling into place for her. Jackie was happy, and life was going exactly the way she wanted. Not long before all of this happened, the 24-year-old had told friends she wanted to spend less time on dating apps and actually meet people in real life instead. She was hoping to connect with someone face to face. At the same time, she was also looking for a side job. So with that in mind, less than 12 hours before her body was discovered, on the evening of September 13th, 2016, Jackie went to a bar in Denton to ask about job openings and, just put herself out there a little. Detectives were eventually able to track her movements to several places near University of North Texas. First, she stopped at a bar called Fry Street Public House. While she was sitting at the bar talking with the bartender, a man sitting 2 seats away joined the conversation. The two of them seemed to hit it off pretty quickly. They were laughing, showing each other things on their phones, and drinking together. Then, Jackie, the bartender, and the man all left the bar at the same time. After that, Jackie and the man went to another bar called Shots and Crafts. They sat together at the bar, and eventually a group of women joined them. The group hung out together for around half an hour. Then, at about 9:45 that night, Jackie and the man left the bar together. Nobody walked out behind them, and it didn't seem like anyone else had been following Jackie either. The two got into his car, and he drove to a gas station. Security cameras captured Jackie sitting in the front passenger seat. She still appeared calm and completely comfortable being there. But those would end up being the last known images of Jackie before she vanished. Surprisingly, a few of the women the pair had met at Shots and Crafts were actually able to give detectives the man's name. While they were talking about fitness, he had even handed one of them his business card. His name was Charles Dean Bryant, a 30-year-old personal trainer who also worked part-time as a bartender. Charles lived about 20 miles away near Grapevine Lake, but lately he had been spending a lot of time around the Denton area trying to reconnect with his ex-girlfriend Caitlin. When investigators looked into his background, they found several prior offenses over the years, including forgery charges, marijuana possession, and a misdemeanor assault charge. But one detail stood out more than anything else. He had been arrested 3 separate times for stalking and harassing Caitlin. And even more disturbing, just 3 days before Jackie's body was found, a protective order had been issued against him. 18-year-old Caitlin had started dating 29-year-old Charles back in June, just 3 months earlier. At first, he seemed charming, funny, and really attentive. He would often show up with flowers and act like the perfect boyfriend. One of their favorite places to go together was actually Grapevine Lake. But like people always say, a mother's intuition is a real thing. Caitlin's mom later said that the moment she saw him for the first time, she immediately had this gut feeling that he was dangerous. He's going to hurt you. He's going to do something terrible, she told her daughter. Before long, Caitlin started noticing a lot of red flags, controlling behavior, manipulation, and just this really toxic energy around him. Eventually, she decided to end the relationship. Not surprisingly, he did not take the breakup well at all. He became obsessive. He made fake email accounts just to contact her, showed up basically everywhere she went, and kept telling anyone who would listen that Caitlin was supposedly crazy. The 18-year-old finally felt some relief when she moved away to attend University of North Texas. She thought it would be a fresh start, far away from him. But then one day, he knocked on the door of her dorm room, and that's when she realized the situation had become genuinely terrifying. She had never told him where she lived. Holding a bouquet of flowers and a letter, he had somehow managed to get past campus security and into the building. Caitlin hid inside her closet and called 911. Police arrested him, but then, unbelievably, later that same day, he showed up on campus again.
I heard him say, "Hey, it's Charles. I have something for you."
You know for sure it was him.
Yeah, I know. It's him.
Sierra 27, myself, a 443 and a BI. You have school here?
No.
What's your name?
Another woman who had gone on a few dates with him described a really similar experience. According to her, they had barely even spent time together and had never once kissed, but Charles was already telling her that he loved her. She said everything moved way too fast. He also opened up to her about his home life and claimed that he had been sexually abused as a child. Based on the way he acted and some of the things he said, she believed it could have been true. Now, investigators had cell phone records in their hands, and those records helped them piece together a much clearer timeline of what happened after Jackie and Charles were seen at the gas station. The phones belonging to Jackie and Charles showed that the two traveled from Denton toward the Hazlet area where Charles lived. Then, at 10:56 that night, Charles logged onto Facebook and posted this: "I'll teach you tricks that'll completely blow your mind." Then Jackie's phone was detected near his house at around 1:30 in the morning, and at 4:41 a.m., surveillance cameras captured Charles inside a Walmart where he bought a shovel. Less than 2 hours later, Jackie's burning body was discovered. The very next day, Charles posted on Facebook, "Full moon tonight, let's see what kind of trouble I get myself into today." He also tried contacting Caitlin again. At this point, the evidence was piling up fast, and Charles had officially become the main suspect in Jackie's murder. Investigators called Caitlin and asked if she was safe. The very first thing she said was, "Is this about the murder in Grapevine? Is this about Charles?" The detectives couldn't confirm anything yet, but honestly, she already knew. Because Charles had contacted Caitlin in violation of the protective order, police now had grounds to arrest him, and that gave them the perfect opportunity to question him about Jackie. On September 18th, just 4 days after Jackie's body was found, Charles was already sitting inside an interrogation room. Investigators showed him a photo of Jackie, and he claimed that maybe he had seen her at a bar before, but according to him, they never interacted and he didn't personally know her at all. While the interview was happening, law enforcement officers were searching his house, literally tearing the place apart piece by piece. At that point, investigators still couldn't say exactly how Jackie had died, and that made it harder to file official charges, especially since Charles was starting to shut down and talk less and less during questioning. So then they decided to bring in Jim Holland, a Texas Ranger known for handling intense cases like this one. He specialized in high-profile murder cases.
Hey, how you doing?
Jim was convinced that he needed to handle the case himself, especially when it involved psychopathic or sociopathic crimes. Jim later said, "A lot of people like that eventually tell on themselves they want to tell somebody about it." Charles knew exactly what had happened to Jackie, and Jim was convinced that sooner or later he was going to tell him everything.
You know, you're not a violent dude. You haven't really been in trouble. You know, you obviously work out. I mean, you're a stud, right?
Jim decided to take the good cop approach, trying to make Charles feel like he was someone on his side. He later said he wanted Charles to see him almost like a drinking buddy, and honestly, it worked. Charles was talkative, smiling, and seemed to genuinely trust Jim. The longer they talked, the closer Jim leaned toward Charles, who was sitting all the way in the corner of the room. It almost felt like the walls were slowly closing in around him, and Charles seemed really close to finally admitting what had happened. Eventually, Jim got Charles to admit that he actually had been with Jackie that night. He said he overheard her asking about a job and inserted himself into the conversation. According to Charles, when they left the bar, it was raining outside, so he offered to give her a ride home. And supposedly, she was grateful and agreed right away.
It makes sense, it was raining. I probably would offer to ride home.
Jim could tell he was slowly getting closer to the truth, so he ordered pizza and coffee for the room. While casually placing a few slices of pizza onto a paper plate, Jim calmly asked Charles about Caitlin.
Was there a time that you pictured her as this girlfriend that did you wrong, or did anything like that come into play?
No.
Was what happened with Jackie connected to Caitlin somehow? Maybe like some kind of revenge? But Charles just said no, and then went quiet.
Okay, so something happens. Bam, there's a snap, and we need to figure out what that is. And maybe, you know, she got mad. Maybe she's giving you all the signals and then cut you off. I mean, there could be all kinds of different things going on here, right? I mean, chicks, right? You know chicks?
However, about 3 hours later, Charles changed his story. He claimed that the two of them had started kissing and being physically affectionate in the car consensually, and then, according to him, Jackie asked him to choke her with a plastic zip tie. Jim immediately said the whole consensual explanation was a lie, and the medical examiner later confirmed there was no evidence of sexual contact. Charles insisted that neither of them intentionally tightened the zip tie, and he claimed he didn't even remember exactly how it happened. But then, according to his story, he looked down and realized Jackie was no longer breathing.
She didn't fight you in any way so you think you just tightened up on its own, basically?
Not so much that, like, it had a snag on something or...
Okay. Then what happened?
I'm trying to remember. Yeah, she's not responsive. Shake her. Nothing.
Jim said the entire story sounded completely made up. He explained that in cases like this, people almost never tell the full truth from beginning to end. They usually leave out the details that make them look guilty or cruel. According to Jim, people like that try to paint themselves as the victim, or as someone who supposedly just got caught in a situation that spiraled out of control. And honestly, Jim said the amount of nonsense Charles was saying during the interview was unbelievable. He was convinced that Charles had intentionally killed Jackie and that the motive was likely connected to his growing obsession with his ex-girlfriend, Caitlin.
Karen, what do you see in the pool?
Garbage bags.
Right, now tell me exactly what you see occurring after that.
Go down that trail.
And what happens next?
Light it on fire.
The fire. Why do you burn the body?
Good evidence.
Inside Charles's house, investigators uncovered a huge amount of evidence. They found a large hunting knife that they believed had been used to dismember Jackie's body. Jackie's bag from Texas Women's University was discovered tossed in the trash. They also recovered a white plastic zip tie with Jackie's hair caught inside it. In his car, investigators found a battery from Jackie's phone, along with a stun gun that had her DNA on the electrodes. The kiddie pool where Jackie's body was discovered also came from Charles's yard. And on top of all that, police found material involving child abuse on his phone. Because of the incredible work done by Jim Holland during the interrogation, the Grapevine Police Department officially charged Charles Bryant with the murder of Jackie Vandegrift. Jim had nearly 30 years of experience in law enforcement and had investigated hundreds of murder cases, but he said Jackie's case stayed with him in a way very few others ever had. According to Jim, Charles showed almost every warning sign of a serial killer who was only just beginning. I think this was his first failed murder. Would he have stopped? Why would he? I honestly have no doubt that if Brian hadn't been arrested by the Grapevine Police Department, he would have kept killing, and every time he probably would have gotten better at it. And I think the better he became, the closer he would have gotten to being almost impossible to catch. On the night Charles was arrested, Caitlin went onto Facebook and, still completely in shock, started reading the news about what had happened. But when she typed Jackie's name into the search bar, she froze. They were already friends on Facebook. The day after Jackie was murdered, Charles had posted a tweet from Jackie's account, but he had also used her phone to log into Facebook and send Caitlin a friend request. Caitlin later said, "I honestly think he wanted to kill me. I think he wanted me dead. I don't know if this was his way of trying to send me some kind of message or if he was just taking out all of his anger. But he went too far, way too far." Jim agreed with her, and he added, "I think he walked into that bar that night with a specific goal already in mind. I think he was planning to kill someone. It honestly didn't matter who. And in the end, Jackie was just in the wrong place at the wrong time." And she also looked a lot like his ex-girlfriend. After the charges were filed, a memorial vigil was held in Jackie's hometown of Frisco.
Tonight, family and friends are mourning the loss of Jackie Vandegrift, the TWU student murdered last week.
A vigil has just begun in Frisco, and NTTV's Blake Holland is here with more. Blake?
Drake and Shelby, tonight friends and family of Jackie Vandegrift are gathered here at Frisco Common Park not to remember the horrific crime that occurred last week, but to look back on the life of a young woman gone too soon.
Yeah, you don't ever think something like this could happen to somebody you know.
Friends like Olivia Reyes, who recently started living with Jackie, were shocked to hear the news this week that a body found burned and mutilated last Wednesday in Grapevine had been identified as Jackie.
Disbelief. I was really shocked. It's really difficult news to process, and I'm still going through that process right now, but it's upsetting.
On Sunday, police arrested this man, 30-year-old Charles Bryant, on a charge of capital murder. Surveillance video shows the pair at a Denton bar just hours before her body was found. Cell phone records also show the two traveled from the bar to Bryant's Haslett home. A purse belonging to Vandegrift was found by police in a trash can at the home on Sunday. And in the hours before Vandegrift's body was found, Bryant is seen purchasing a shovel at an area Walmart, matching up with evidence in his backyard that someone had tried to dig a hole. Despite the large amount of evidence, those who knew Vandegrift were still left with questions into the murder of a selfless friend who they say did not deserve this.
Something like this should never happen.
And we do know tonight that Charles Dean Bryant does remain in jail on $1 million bond on that charge of capital murder. Tonight's candlelight vigil is set to get underway at around sunset. We're live in Frisco. Blake Holland, NTTV News.
Charles Bryant pleaded not guilty, and the case eventually went to trial. His defense attorneys argued that Jackie's death had been an accident. A tragic accident, absolutely, but still an accident. They told the jury that both of them had been drinking heavily that night and later had consensual sex inside his car. According to the defense, after Jackie died, Charles panicked while intoxicated and decided to dispose of the body and cover up what happened. Yes, what he did afterward was horrifying and definitely counted as tampering with evidence, but murder, they argued no. Prosecutors, however, pushed back hard against that version of events. They pointed out that the medical examiner had already ruled out any evidence of sexual contact. There was absolutely nothing proving the two had been intimate. Jackie's belongings were found inside his house and car, and he had clearly tried to get rid of them. Her DNA was discovered on the stun gun, and her hair was found tangled in the plastic zip tie. And honestly, the dismemberment itself said a lot. That alone showed just how unbelievably brutal the whole thing really was. Because if this had truly been an accident, then why, for the love of God, would someone do that to her afterward? The prosecutor said, "Why remove her heart? What does that have to do with hiding a body?" I want you to really remember that image. And the motive? The prosecution believed the same thing Jim did. They were convinced that everything traced back to Charles's stalking and harassment of Caitlin. According to their theory, Jackie may have been the first victim, and Caitlin could have eventually become the second. There was also the possibility that removing Jackie's heart carried some kind of deeply personal meaning for him.
And now her accused killer is finally on trial.
That's right. Testimony started today in the trial of Charles Bryant Jr., the man seen with Jackie at the bar that night. Our David Goins has been tweeting and updating us from the courtroom. He joins us now live with the latest from the court today.
Good afternoon, Cynthia. Testimony wrapped up here about 10 minutes ago. Jurors so far have heard descriptions but have not yet seen surveillance video at a variety of Denton businesses that show Jackie Vandergriff with the man prosecutors say killed her hours later.
It's my daughter, Jackie.
On the stand today, Ricky Vandergriff says it wasn't like Jackie to not call or to make plans for her mom's birthday. It was on that day, just a few hours later, the couple learned that Jackie was dead. During opening statements, defense attorneys admit that Bryant did commit a crime by attempting to dispose of her body, but they told jurors that she died during what the defense called consensual sex in Bryant's car.
He wigs out. He is in the car with a young lady who has died during the course of sex.
However, prosecutors plan to lay out Jackie's final hours for jurors to show how Bryant took the vibrant 24-year-old out of a bar and away from her loved ones forever.
Tragically, an evil, destructive figure stepped in front of her on that path.
Jurors on Tuesday are expected to see a lot of surveillance video in the courtroom. This trial is expected to last all week. Charles Bryant faces life in prison if he's found guilty. Live in Fort Worth, David Goins, Channel 8 News.
The judge wanted to decide whether Caitlin's story and her experiences with Charles were important enough to be allowed as evidence in court. So, outside the presence of the jury, Caitlin bravely took the witness stand and told the court everything. Unfortunately, it ended up being a major blow to the prosecution. The judge ruled that Caitlin would not be allowed to share her story with the jury. Another really interesting decision was that prosecutors chose not to show the jury the full 6-hour interrogation conducted by Jim Holland. Instead, they basically said this: if Charles wanted to tell his version of events, he could take the stand himself and explain it. And while that might have seemed risky to some people, it was actually a very smart move. Would he be able to remember everything he had already said before? Would he stick to one consistent story? Or would he start getting confused about the timeline and contradict himself? It was honestly a really effective way to potentially catch him in a lie. But Charles refused to testify.
Ken Molestina here with us. We saw you on the 4 o'clock show earlier, but you spent much of your day in court. What was going on inside?
Well, you know, a lot of just routine second day kind of testimony. You know, we know this. The details about Jacqueline Vandergriff's murder, those are certainly gruesome. But today, the testimony from the stand, it mainly focused on placing both the victim and the suspect, Charles Bryant, in the same place on September 13th, 2016.
She seemed just fine. We just chatted about how her night was going, you know, school, typical things.
UNT student Sherry Bogue was one of the witnesses on day 2 of the trial. She testified to seeing both Vandergriff and Bryant out for drinks along Fry Street in Denton the night she was last seen alive. Surveillance video used in the trial showed as much.
The female sat pretty close to us, and, you know, as ladies, we wanted to go and talk to her, so we chatted with her for a little bit. And then the man was talking to the bartender and then eventually to us.
Aside from Bogue, Tuesday's testimony mostly dealt with a list of expert witnesses, which also included an FBI agent who explained how cell phone data was used to track both Vandergriff and Bryant's phones that night.
The next activity I have is on the victim's phone from 12:58 to 1:32 a.m. And the phone, the bar is kind of about right here. So we started moving south. And so 12:58, utilize this tower sector. Then it shifts, goes farther south at 1:16 a.m. and then at 1:10 a.m. So kind of somewhere between 1:10 and 1:16, so this overlap between these two towers.
Once both sides finished presenting their evidence, the defense and the prosecution each felt confident in their case. But in the end, the jury sided with the prosecution
A quick verdict in the murder of TWU student Jackie Vandegrift. Tarrant County jurors taking just 2 hours to find Charles Bryant guilty.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Charles B. Bryant Jr., guilty of the offense of murder.
And Charles Bryant was convicted of capital murder. Because prosecutors were unable to prove additional aggravating factors like kidnapping or sexual assault, he avoided the death penalty. So in 2018, he was sentenced to life in prison.
In a statement, Jackie Vandegrift's parents said this is the day they've waited more than 19 months for. However, it certainly doesn't ease any of the grief over the loss of their daughter. Her convicted killer, Charles Bryant, today in court showed no reaction when the jury convicted him of murder and then sentenced him to life in prison. Now, during closing arguments for the sentencing phase, prosecutors brought up the fact that Charles Bryant had a stalking incident with a previous girlfriend and that investigators had also discovered child pornography on his phone. 2 additional reasons they told jurors to sentence him to the max of life in prison. After the verdict was read, Vandegrift's family, who sat through days of horrific and graphic testimony surrounding her murder, shared that they are starting an endowment at TWU in Denton, where Jackie went to school, to, in their words, build on her legacy of kindness and compassion.
It was a hard case. It was hard for the state. It was hard for the defense. But I think that our system works.
Bryant's attorneys added they have already appealed the decision. He also was convicted of 20 years in prison for tampering with evidence. That will be served at the same time that this life sentence that the jury handed down this afternoon. Live in Tarrant County, David Goins, Channel 8 News.
He'll be eligible for parole in 20 years, but as we know, that outcome is far from guaranteed. For Jackie's family, even hearing the possibility of parole was painful. No sentence could truly feel long enough after what happened, and no amount of time could ever undo the damage that had already been done. He also received an additional 20-year sentence for tampering with evidence, though that sentence will run concurrently with the life sentence. Even after the verdict was read, the atmosphere surrounding the case still felt heavy and unresolved because for the people who loved Jackie, there was never going to be a version of this story that felt fair. Caitlin later admitted that she constantly struggles with guilt, feeling like she somehow ended up at the center of what happened to Jackie. That guilt stayed with her long after the investigation ended and long after the courtroom proceedings were over. She said she thinks about it every single day, replaying the events in her mind and wondering if anything could have been different. But the truth is, there was nothing she could have done to change what happened. The responsibility belongs entirely to the person who made the decision to hurt Jackie. Still, guilt has a way of attaching itself to people who survive tragedies like this, even when they had no control over the outcome. This entire story is heartbreaking on every level. From the very beginning, there's something deeply unsettling about how ordinary that night seemed before everything went wrong. There were no warning signs that stood out in the moment, no obvious indication of the danger waiting just a few hours ahead. That night, Jackie walked into that bar with nothing but the hope of meeting new people and maybe find a good job opportunity. It was such a normal reason to go out. She wasn't looking for trouble. She wasn't taking some extreme risk. She was simply socializing, talking to people, and trying to create opportunities for herself like countless other young adults do every single day. And yeah, she really did strike up a conversation with someone she seemed to connect with easily. From the outside, it probably looked completely harmless. Just 2 people talking, casually, laughing, getting along naturally in a crowded bar late at night. Nothing about it appeared unusual at the time. When you meet new people, you usually want to believe that most of them are good. That instinct is completely human. Most people don't walk into conversations expecting danger. They expect kindness, friendliness, or at the very least basic safety. Jackie was no different. She was laughing, talking, connecting with people. Witnesses remembered her as social, friendly, and comfortable around the people she met that night. It should have been an ordinary evening, the kind of night that fades into memory without consequence. Then she got into his car, trusting him and thinking he was simply trying to save her from a long walk home in the rain. In that moment, it likely felt like a small act of kindness. A gesture most people wouldn't think twice about accepting, especially after spending hours talking to someone who seemed normal and approachable. She probably believed he was a genuinely kind person, someone safe, someone she could trust for a short ride home. And that's one of the most haunting parts of this entire case, how quickly an ordinary interaction turned into something horrific. And honestly, the thought of the exact moment she realized the danger she was in is just absolutely heartbreaking. The fear, the confusion, the realization that the person she trusted was never who he pretended to be is difficult to even imagine. Jackie's family later created an internship program in health and wellness at Texas Women's University in her honor. It was their way of making sure her passion, her goals, and the future she worked toward would continue to impact other people even after her death. Her friend says she left behind a beautiful legacy and that the world genuinely became darker without her in it. Not quieter, not emptier, darker. Because the kind of energy Jackie brought into people's lives was impossible to replace. Her uncle said, "What would Jackie say if we could talk to her right now? We believe she would say, 'Remember me. Remember my hopes, my dreams for the future, and the plans I had to make those dreams come true.'"